A couple of days ago, Mark Carney said he's going to work with China to bring about a new world order. What is going on? Hey, Garland. Hey, Susan. Thank you so much for
Hello.
being so available.
Hey
Thanks
there.
for inviting me.
You are so welcome. Great to have you on again. It's Friday, the 16th of January at 8:15 UK time. The first video we talked about Greenland and went into Venezuela and issues of sovereignty and how Trump conducts himself as a president. This one we're going to start off with Canada, and I'm going to ask you to begin this one, Susan, with what was it he said and why, and what does it signify? What's going on here?
Well, I think to understand what he said when he was in, I guess he might still be in China. It just happened, where he talked about Canada and China. We're trying to put together a new world order. I think you have to go back a little bit. Go back to what he said at the ASEAN conference back at the end of October or beginning of November, where he became one of the first people of a certain international stature to just stand there and say, well, the post-war rules-based free trade liberal order that we created is over. And pretty much is saying that it's Donald Trump who ended it. My colleague Barbara Boyd did a powerful show on Wednesday where she shows the video of Bronwyn Maddox, the head of Chatham House, which is the mouthpiece for the British elite, the royal family, and so on. And she's just, by now, everybody's letting it all hang out. Donald Trump has broken our post-war system. New York Times has a piece this week. I mean, again, now it's becoming commonplace. So if Trump has broken their system, and I would submit he's broken it precisely on the grounds of the national security strategy and many speeches that he's given, which is, I want a world of sovereign nations, not worlds that are a world under globalist institutions and rules, then the question is, what are the people who ran that globalist system going to do? Because their system has been based on the United States playing ball, which we've seen every president pretty much in the post-war period, maybe with the exception of John Kennedy, do. And we know what happened to him. But it doesn't matter whether it was a Jimmy Carter, a Bill Clinton, either of the Bushes, Obama. They've played by the rules of what some call the Anglo-American establishment. So if Trump has broken those rules, which I think he has quite thoroughly, then what are you going to put in its place? And I frankly don't know what Carney thinks he's going to do in terms of China. The imbalances, I mean, it's not like there's a big consumer market in China for Canadian goods. So I don't know what he thinks he's going to get out of it. I think there's just a certain amount of role playing at this point. We've got to still be relevant, so we're going to create a new world order. Well, my attitude right now kind of is good luck with that.
Well, perhaps driving a wedge between China and Russia?
He may be trying to do that, but I don't think that's, I'm reminded of someone I think we're all familiar with, Linda LaRouche. She once did a campaign video in the 1980s, one of my favorite ones, where he says, when I look at how most people talk about foreign policy, I'm reminded of little girls playing with dolls. And that just keeps popping into my head, because part of that image is, little girls playing with dolls. They say to one doll, well, I want you to stop being bad to the other doll, and so on. But who's actually moving the dolls? It's not the dolls. It's not the positions the dolls are taking. And, when I look at some of these people today, or some people who talk about how we're going to get peace in the world. Well, yeah, I mean, we want to stop people from being killed in Gaza and anywhere else. But how do you actually do it? You don't say to your doll, stop doing it. You have to go to the forces that are behind these policies, which in our thinking has always been the British imperial system, using the United States too often as a dumb giant. But now the United States is no longer functioning as their dumb giant, and I think they're scrambling.
A couple of things. Number one, I think it shows it's a very Western thing to do, and that's to have an absurdly outsized view of your world influence. Really, Canada and China, Now, if China said we're going to do it, I'd say, okay, well, now you're getting some. What am I going to say? You know, me and Bill Gates are going to get together and change this town. Bill Gates would be, who the hell is Garland Nixon? That guy's got like $5 and I got 300 million. You know what I'm saying? So China, who has what? Maybe 60% of the gross domestic product of California. And they're going to change the world with China. Oh boy, I'm excited. I don't think China you're a flea on China's back, Canada. So I don't know what the heck you're talking about. They don't even know you're there. But China didn't say, yes, oh, Canada's coming. Whoa, man, we better get ready. Roll out the red carpet. The big guys are coming to town. No, there's 3 countries. There's China, there's Russia, there's the United States. They operate in a sphere on their own. And right now, it's I'd say multipolar, but really a bipolar world. It's Canada. The US is kind of on one side and China and Russia are allied on the other side. Now, there's 2 ways to look at even what China said. We are going to create this thing as opposed to a new world order is forming. You know, that's kind of like between the old saying about, if you get into Eastern philosophy, does a child say, how was I made? Or does a child say, how did I grow? Right? Was I built? Was I something that somebody put together like a robot with parts? Or do you put a seed in the ground and organically watch it grow? So my argument would be this. A new world order is forming. And we're not 100% sure what that new world order is going to be because there's a lot of inputs coming in, be it Trump, be it Russia, be it Ukraine, be it what's happening in the Middle East. And we cannot predict the outcome. But the new world order is forming, but that mentality that China, that Canada's given, we are going to form this thing. No, you're not. It's going to form. And you're going to end up being a chihuahua barking at the tractor trailer that drives by. Don't get in front of it or you'll get smushed.
Well,
one thing I just add in terms of Canada, I suspect that, most serious world leaders and diplomats, when they hear Mark Carney speaking, they know he's not speaking on behalf of Canada.
Yeah.
He's speaking on behalf of a global elite, which is trying to somehow get back in the game.
Yeah, that was the point that I was going to make, probably not as eloquently as that, Susan. But Canada's closely connected to Britain, the United Kingdom, and the European Union, and the whole globalist entities. So then what could be how would they be served by Carney making these overtures to China? Maybe I'm thinking on the fly here, right? Look, one of the things that Tom Luongo has maintained is if you're the weakest, there's 4 people fighting, or the European Union and Britain, they want to rule the world, but they don't stand a chance against these Russia, China, and the US giants, right? So what they can do is manipulate a fight between those 3, and then the European Union and the UK can walk in and pick up the spoils, because these other 3 have battered each other. So maybe it's an attempt by the Western globalists to again extract China away from Russia.
Well, there's another thing too, and that is if you're weak, right, you need some leverage. And I'll never underestimate the importance of leverage. So if I'm Canada and I'm like, okay, I don't have any strength right now, but I know the US doesn't want me to align with China. So I'll go over here and feign an alignment with China. So maybe they'll come over to me and they'll say, well, if you don't align with China, we'll give you this. Because right now I have no leverage. So it's a possibility there that they're doing something they can to fake an alignment with China. So maybe the US will offer them something not to do with that. Maybe they can get a little leverage. Because countries who are weak are always looking for any kind of leverage they can get, some kind of a bargaining position, particularly in light of what Stephen Miller said recently. Well, this is about force and whoever has power and whoever's the strongest. Well, that tells everybody you need to get any leverage you can, because the only thing this particular administration is going to the way they'll bargain with you is if you got leverage, if you got strength, we'll bargain with the strength and leverage. If you don't, we won't. So I think Canada and a lot of other countries are looking for leverage anywhere they can find it. Desperately, I might add, because they ain't going to find it in China.
Yeah, I think that's a really, really good point. And it also goes on to what you were saying, Susan, about dogs. But that's what happens in a playground. Kids getting bullied by one bully. Well, okay, I'll go and make friends with the other bully. so then I'm protected. I've got some cover here. And in the end, it all goes down to kids. We're all kids.
Kids on the, why does it always come back to kids on the playground?
That's right. That's right. Putin and Trump and Xi and the little midgets over in Europe and the UK. Now, let's talk about Alberta, because I know we mentioned that. I don't know if we mentioned in the previous video or perhaps before we started recording about Alberta becoming possibly the 51st state. Will Alberta become a state before Greenland does? But what will the impact be on Canada? Garland, you got any thoughts here?
Yeah, I don't. Yeah, I don't. As I said, I don't know Canada well enough to really say, but I do think that ultimately, it will be very difficult. I think the United States will talk a lot about taking Canada and Greenland, particularly Canada. I don't see how they can do it. I think there'll be a lot of talk and discussions, but ultimately, I believe that Canada walks away from this thing still being Canada.
Well, they just, they had a huge turnout in Alberta of people to sign the petition to hold an election on Albertan independence. And as I understand it, that's going to take place in the fall. So I think it's up to the Albertans. But they're pretty feisty people. They're kind of like Wild West Americans out there. And I know that, and they legitimately feel that their economic development has been suppressed by Canadian policies, which is not surprising because if you look at how the British Empire operates, if they lose actual physical control over a country, as they did with us in the American Revolution, and they failed to destroy us in the Civil War. So at a certain point, by the end of the 19th century, the British are basically sitting there saying, okay, well, if we can't conquer them or we can't break them up, how are we going to be able to subvert them? And if you look at something in the United States, it does remind me very much of Alberta. At the beginning of the 20th century, starting with Teddy Roosevelt and then going forward, Teddy Roosevelt, polar opposite of Franklin Roosevelt, total British idiot, the western part of the United States got locked up. You go west of the Rockies, there was not a single new city built in the 20th century except for Las Vegas, which was run by the mob. It was locked up in terms of national parks, federal lands, and so on. This was a way for the empire to stop the development of the United States by basically locking up a good part of our country. Now, if they were able to do that by just manipulating our ideologies or, having a president who thought like they did or a bunch of presidents, that's one thing. Canada, they've got much greater control. So Canada is actually tremendously underdeveloped. And I saw one comment from, I believe it was an Albertan, saying we want independence so we can actually become a modern industrial entity. So I'm going to leave it to the Albertans, to figure it out. And I think that's how Trump is looking at it too. Creating the room for people to make decisions on their own, which are different from what has been imposed upon them in the past. You can actually now think about independence. And you can decide whether you want to be the 51st state or you can decide whether you want to be an independent entity. But again, this gets back to Trump just sort of kicking over the chessboard and creating the freedom for alternatives that have not been on the table in some cases for 100 years or so, like the development of the western parts of the United States and Canada. Right. They were just off the table.
I would say this about Alberta, a couple of things. Number one thing we know, Alberta, bad news for you. Even if you become sovereign, you can't do business with China and Russia unless the United States gives you permission. So that's a comparative sovereignty. But the other part of it is this. Here's the problem. The U.S., just like, the European countries, are countries of speculative capital. So we've been deindustrialized intentionally. And so if you think you're going to get reindustrialized by a country it's just like the City of London. We were made in there, the City of London cloned us, and now we are a country of speculation and speculative capital. And we did away with our heavy industry, and there seems to be no intent to rebuild heavy industry right now. Even right now, the intent is, if you look at the and this is relative to Canadians who, of course, like anyone else, would want to reindustrialize, right? That's what they would want to do, is reindustrialize, because they've been deindustrialized and turned into a speculative capital like all of us. The problem is, even looking at the whatever that thing is, the national security strategy, if you look at it, it isn't a reindustrialization. It only looks at the three places that will allow us to have like hegemonic globalism. What do they say that we want to rebuild? The military industrial complex. What is that for? Hegemonic globalism. What else do we want to build? The banking. What is that for? And they even say in there, basically, so we can sanction people and control people with the banks. Last but not least, what is the third thing they say? Technology. And what do we use technology for in Iran or wherever? Hegemonic globalism. If we truly want to reindustrialize, and I've talked with a lot of very significant international economists about that. If you want to reindustrialize, the foundation is heavy industry. You've got to have steel mills, right? You've got to have you got to make aluminum mills. You got to have the foundational heavy industry. We're not talking about going into heavy industry. And if you don't go into heavy industry, you're not really reindustrializing, because you don't have a supply chain. How can you have an industry when you got to buy your steel and your aluminum and everything that's made at a foundational area from everyone else? So I would say this to Canada, even in Alberta, even if you want freedom and you don't like that speculative capital, we're not reindustrializing. And our plans don't call for reindustrialization. They call for very specific growth in three areas, and those areas are the globalist areas. So
I
it
think
sounds good. Okay, go ahead.
Susan, I almost can guess from having had this conversation with you before. Go for it, Susan.
Well, I think you've missed the whole point of tariffs.
Before all of those, Garland, you've got to have energy. You've got to have energy. You cannot build a modern society on
absolutely
farms and wind power. And Trump has said we're going to drill. We're going to drill. We're going to.
Well, it's even more important than drill, baby, drill. But I mean, first of all, start with the tariffs. The tariffs are explicitly geared toward reshoring our aluminum industry, reshoring our steel industry. One of the first things Trump did is he did a summit out in Western Pennsylvania in the middle of last year, which was very interesting because the Democratic governor showed up. That would not have happened in Michigan with our crazy witch here. And they talked about the huge amount of investment that was coming in, steel plants that are being reopened up again, and so on. I mean, the aluminum tariffs, the steel tariffs are explicitly geared toward reindustrializing. If you read that one section of the national security strategy, it's kind of shocking to have in the national security strategy, our policy is pro-worker. And this has been a constant theme of this administration, from everybody from Scott Bessent down to Lori Chavez de Remmer. Many of the tariff deals, the deals that Trump has made with other countries, are to bring investment directly into the United States for precisely heavy industry. Like, how about the $5 billion from South Korea to rebuild the Philadelphia shipyard and start producing things again? Just in the month of November, we tracked the ground broken. It was 133 factories, 199 warehouses, and somewhere in between there was processing plants. But just in the month of November, more than 400 facilities, factories, and so on that were broken ground in the United States. I don't know the December numbers yet, but it's going to go up. Again, in terms, and then you get to the question of energy. And of course, Trump's signature has been drill, baby, drill. But that's only going to get you so far. Energy for the 21st century means nuclear, and it means fusion. And this administration is sweeping away all of the regulations that have tied up our ability to produce nuclear energy. And we're going to start seeing this stuff coming online very, very quickly. And then, of course, the famous Truth Social merger with the Fusion Company, which is really quite stunning, because this means, the president and the president's family are basically saying, yeah, our future is in this revolutionary technology, which we should have had 50 years ago, but it was just basically underfunded and strangled in the grave. And then I'll throw one more aspect in. The Labor Department has got a program to create 1 million skilled apprentices in the United States. These are your blue-collar workers. And the last time I saw the figure, they had already filled, I think, half of those just in 2025. Vocational schools in the United States, we're finding out, now have waiting lists to get in, because people are precisely seeing we need people in the trades because we're building. And then the one big beautiful bill, 100% full expensing if you come back to the United States and you break ground on a factory, not on a pot distribution warehouse. But 100% full expensing means you take the cost of doing that off of your taxes the first year. You don't amortize it over 15, 20, 30 years in order to force the reshoring of precisely our heavy industry. So to say that this administration is not committed to rebuilding our heavy industry, it just doesn't square with what I'm seeing. And of course, I'm also sitting here in Detroit, Michigan. And, Trump was just at the Ford plant, the Rouge plant, about 8 miles from here the other day. And they're running 3 shifts for the first time in decades, I think, at that plant, building the Ford F-150s. Stellantis is coming back in with major investments, reshoring from Mexico. I think they're going to start building the Durango here and in Illinois instead of in Mexico. There's a massive influx of actual manufacturing. Now, yeah, you're doing the rest of it. You're doing AI, you're doing technology. We're in a world where if you're not out front in terms of that, you're going to be left behind. And it can be used for war and it can be used for peace. So a technology in and of itself doesn't determine what your intentions are. But, if you look at everything this administration has done, they are forced marching industry back into the United States, and that includes steel, that includes auto, that includes aluminum, that includes coal, that includes mining. I just don't see how you can say we're not going for heavy industry.
Well, I think we're in a different world, for one thing. And Stellantis, I don't think we have to. If they last a year, I'll be shocked. Stellantis is in deep and serious trouble. I think they're done. I don't see how they can have, $80,000 Jeeps and the lots are packed with them and nobody will buy them and they can't give them away. I don't see how that country, if you know the history on there, they brought some neoliberal lunatic in. The prices of Jeeps went up 60% over 3 years. He took his salary from 19 million to 40 million. So he was successful, and then they fired him, and now all Stellantis has is all over this country lots full of $80,000 Jeeps that they can't sell. I personally think Stellantis ain't going to be around very long if you look at it. But I just think the world is different. It just takes such a different approach, because one of the problems, I think, and that's a problem I think with both Biden and Trump, and that is we bring people who are really, really old in, and they have a vision of the world that we're going to rebuild what we did in the 1960s or 50s with similar industry. Well, we can't. Number one, even China, right now in India, the cost of labor is like 1/5 of what it is in China. So a lot of the foundational labor moves to India. The labor, you saw what happened. It left here. It went to cheaper labor in China. It's jumping to cheaper labor, and it'll just keep jumping down to the lowest possible denominator. So with the exorbitant cost of living, as long as BlackRock's buying up all the houses and you have to pay $450,000 for a piece of crap.
Which Trump just banned.
He banned BlackRock buying houses. You sure about that?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, if he did, that's a good thing. My point being, the cost of living right now is so high that traditional industry as we know it can't return to the United States, and even China's changing it. So I think the big problem, I'll throw this at you, is that we're not investing in education. So we don't, even if we have all of this crap, we don't have people who all of the money is going into the military industrial complex or whatever. And we're not just doing the foundational things. I think the US is in deep and serious trouble, and I don't see how we come out of it. And personally, I believe, you say that Trump's not a globalist. And I first would like to have believed it. But now that I see this unreasonable focus on foreign policy, following in the footsteps of these warmongers everywhere, supporting every war, threatening to invade this country, bomb this country, another trillion, people voted for him because he said, I may half the defense budget. And now he's going off saying, I want to double it. The Donald Trump that ran, I think, had a chance at being a good president. The Donald Trump that has done a 180 on a bunch of his policies, I think, has more than anything else, a chance of being a disaster and getting obliterated in the midterms. And then we get the people who are trying to drag us into a middle war, into a nuclear war with Russia back in it. So we're in deep and serious trouble. I wish that he had went with the things that he had run on, and this America First meant a focus on America. It didn't mean, well, what are we going to do with Iran? What are we going to do with Venezuela? What are we going to, these people in here can't do that. Oh, what about the people in this region of the country? He's losing his MAGA people. And once he loses his MAGA people, the ones that hate him will come in and tear him to shreds. He'll be naked.
Well, I am one of his MAGA people, and I also happen to be one of the vice chairs of the Michigan Republican Party. And I can tell you, he ain't losing his MAGA people. He's losing stupid people.
Yeah, I know, but, a lot of MAGA people ain't happy.
Yeah, and
ain't happy.
My approach is stop being stupid. You can't be stupid and be a MAGA person in my book. You shouldn't be stupid and be a MAGA person.
What you should definitely do is subscribe to Promethean Action and
not be so stupid.
To their newsletter.
But I want to take up one thing you brought up, Garland, because a lot of people have said this, including Marjorie Taylor Greene. What is he doing with all this foreign policy stuff? Do you think the United States was destroyed by something internal to the United States? I don't. I think it was an alien policy that came in from the British. Specifically, you can take it back to the Federal Reserve. You can take it back to the assassinations of our presidents. You could take it back to, where does free trade come from? Free trade is not an American policy. The American policy was protectionism. It was tariffs, national banking, and internal improvements. That's the American policy. And every time we've adopted that, under Washington, under John Quincy Adams briefly, under Lincoln, under McKinley, and attempted under Kennedy, and under Roosevelt, Franklin Roosevelt. I don't want to leave that out. I always like to upset my MAGA friends who don't like Franklin Roosevelt. Every time we adopted the American system, we were fine. And that's exactly what Donald Trump is going back to. But why don't we have the American system? Because of external forces. Because the British came in and killed our presidents. Because the British came in and shoved the Federal Reserve down our throat. Because the British ended the Bretton Woods system in 1971 by carrying out an attack on the US dollar. Because the British gave us free trade. These are all British policies, and they come from institutions outside the United States, which have largely dominated the world. So if you want to save the United States, you got to kill that enemy.
Well, I got to say this.
Colin, 1 second.
Sure, go ahead.
Just to tie in with what Susan said, I posted a video a couple of weeks ago which has a picture of Ibrahim Traore and Donald Trump. And what the video is about the American system of political economy, and how what Traore is doing in Burkina Faso is based upon the ideas that he inherited, building upon the shoulders of Thomas Sankara, who learned his craft from Jacques Cheminade, who was a member, or I don't know if he's still alive or not, the LaRouche organization, who was influenced by LaRouche, and LaRouche's ideas hark back to Alexander Hamilton, which is what Susan Kokinda was referring to, the American system of political economy. And then what are the French trying to do? What are the British trying to do to Traore? Coup him, kill him. I also recorded a video with Robert Ingrahams, who's one of the team at Promethean Action, about how it's the British that killed the American presidents, McKinley, JFK, Lincoln. And then also I recorded another video, by the way, this is just a little plug, right, with Matt Ehret, about
Yes, I know that area.
how the British fostered Zionism, violent forms of Islamic fundamentalism, and born-again Christianity through the Scofield Bible, all in all to have these three groups fighting each other, but also then using the Zionists and the born-again Christians to control the United States. So unless you address those, and you address the source of those hostile forces, then you're not going to have a domestic policy. It's just not.
Yeah, I agree. Yes, but there's a couple parts of it. I certainly agree about the malevolent nature of the British Empire and their history, right? But I got to say this: the other part of it is this too, and that is America First. I think the concept of America First was about addressing that. You know, MAGA was what? It was the Tea Party. The Tea Party came along, and what were they? It was an economic. They were very angry about the bailouts, and they came in, and then they got angry because a bunch of Tea Party people won in 2010, and they flipped. They just did whatever they did. They backstabbed them, and the Tea Party was kind of flailing. Trump comes along and says, "Hey, I'll do this economic changes for you, blah, blah, blah." And he kind of blended into the Tea Party. This is my interpretation of it. Somebody disagree, but that's my interpretation of it. And America First meant to me, hey, look, you know, other people did things and other people influenced us and what have you. It's time for us to drop that. It's time to drop excuses. It's time to stop blaming people. It's time to say, look, they did what they did. We're adults. Let's focus on what we're doing. Let's focus our budget on what we're doing. Let's focus on the American people. How can we build? You know, if I have a soccer team and I'm losing, what am I going to do? Go take go try to poison their water and cut the tires of their bus so they can't make it to it? Yeah, this soccer team. Or do I say we need to practice harder? We need to get the best players we can. We need to improve our skills. We need to do this. I think America First was about we need to focus internally on the things we need to do to fix ourselves. And that's how I interpreted America First. And I thought that was a positive thing. And that was, I think, the Rand Pauls, the Thomas Masseys, the Marjorie Taylor Greens. I think that's why Marjorie Taylor Greene walked away. I think she was furious. And I think there are a lot of MAGA people that are saying America First meant something different than what we're getting. It meant laser focus on the United States and what we can rebuild and how can we can fix it. And I think a lot of them don't feel as though they're getting that. And me as a person, my opinion is that's not $1.5 trillion budget. That is not America First. Not Iran and everybody else. That ain't America First. Get out of Ukraine. Iran, hey, do what you're going to do. We ain't there to fix it. Fix your problems or don't. It is, we got problems, real big problems that need fixing now. Not literally, yes, if you hit those protesters, I'm going to come get them. They're your protesters. I may not like what you're doing. They're your protesters. I don't want to talk about your protesters. I got problems of my own. I got a family to feed. I can't tell you how to not feed yours or feed yours. Fine and fair enough. That's not America First. And that's my opinion of Trump. I think he didn't do what he said he was going to do, in my opinion. And that's not a judgment of him as a good guy or a bad guy that I love. You know me, I'm an independent and I just try to analyze. I was hoping some of the things, I knew people that hated Trump. I'm a left-leaning person. I hate Trump. I said, you're making a mistake because that's the politics of personality, not the politics of outcomes. I don't even want to hear what his ideology is. Is he a libertarian, a communist, a socialist? Is he a Democrat? I don't want to hear that. I'm an outcomist. What is your outcome? You said you were going to focus on us and you're telling me about your Iran. Get out of here with that crap. That's not what you told me you were going to do. So that's my position.
Well, I can tell you from most of the MAGA base that I know, it wasn't really that simple. They really do understand that there is a globalist imperial elite, which is our enemy, and that you don't just take care of yourself by ignoring that, and that they see that Trump is committed to taking that on and destroying that structure, which actually can liberate the rest of the world. You know, the United States is obviously
the world. We're liberating the world now
from the British imperial system.
We are liberating the world from the British imperial. I don't want to do that.
Well, maybe you don't.
Liberate the damn
maybe
self.
You don't.
Anyway, go ahead. Hold on a second. Go on, Susan.
Maybe you don't, but a lot of the MAGA base does.
Yeah.
That ain't America first. We're going to liberate. Think about you.
Well, you're
That sounds
defining
like
You're
Biden. We got to
defining
liberate the world.
you're defining
Through
America
the world.
first in terms which I do not encounter in the MAGA movement. So you can identify it that way, but that's not how I see it from being in the middle of it.
Liberating the world.
Let me make a couple of points here, if I may. Right. So
Go
one,
ahead.
I think there's something to do with how we are all the messaging in social media, in independent media, in the mainstream media, that there's all this noise about that Trump is losing all this support and everything, and the polling may be rigged, right? And then there may be what you're saying, Susan, on the ground, and of course your own experience in the US, Garland, through the people you're talking to, that maybe is that way, maybe it isn't that way, right? Which is why it's so important for people to follow Garland on his channel and Promethean Action and all they do, and as well as me, right? That's one point I wanted to make. But if I consider Burkina Faso as an example, Traore cannot build what he's building, what he wants to build, an independent, self-sufficient, strong Burkina Faso, where they look after themselves, where they're at peace with their neighbors, without dealing with the mendacity of the French and British imperial powers, without dealing with their puppets next door in Nigeria, without dealing with how they're using how the imperial powers are using Islamic fundamentalism to assault Burkina Faso and what they're trying to build there. He can't do that. And I can think the same of my own country. Pakistan's not going to be free without addressing its ties to British hegemony, with the British Empire. It's just not. We're always going to be vassals. And it could be, I'm proposing that the United States for too long has been this vassal. Alex Craner refers to the character Master Blaster, I don't know the name, in one of the Mad Max movies. This massive giant with this little dwarf, blind dwarf, that's the brains, and tells the giant what to do as the hired hand. So consider that, you and I, Garland, as old school lefties, right, grew up with the idea that the UK, Britain, was the puppet of the United States. No, Britain is this malicious, malignant, manipulative, mendacious, nasty perpetrator of domestic abuse that looks like it's the victim, but all the while it's the one pulling the strings through its ownership of the Federal Reserve, through LIBOR, through all these global institutions, through the climate change agenda, through the World Economic Forum, through its agents like Woodrow Wilson and Henry Kissinger and Barack Obama, who were doing the bidding of the British intelligence services. So he's got to get rid of them in order for the United States to be free. Just like Burkina Faso has to get rid of the French influence, and Pakistan and India have to get rid of the British influence, how they're captured by those imperial powers. And it might look like he's not paying attention to domestic policies, but he is, as Susan pointed out earlier. But boy, what a hell of an undertaking. Garland, you are now president of the United States. You got to turn the ship around. You got to free it of British control, and you got to bring in the American system of political economy without getting shot.
Yeah, the last part is where you screwed it all up. I had all kind of plans until you got to the without getting shot part. I don't think that's
you don't want to end up the way of JFK or Lincoln or McKinley, because then the American people aren't served. Then your project fails. How do you do that, Garland? That's a rhetorical question, by the way, as well.
Yeah, one of the things, I'll make this quick, and that is, and that I think it's a terrible mistake to add to expand the military budget, because the part of what the British do, it's like the old song, I got the brains, you got the brawn, let's make some money. And one of the things, they use the United States as a gorilla. They use the United States saying, okay, we'll go over here and threaten them, whatever, and you come in here and pound them. If you expand the military by another $500 billion, or just about double it over a 2-year period, you are giving them the hammer that they want, and they will use it. And the people who are working with you and around you, who work for them, I think it's a terrible mistake to expand the military budget. And here's the truth about that too. All they'll do is if you give them a double we know the way the corruption is. If you give them, okay, we're going to double the military budget. What are you guys going to give us? Oh, nothing. We got a missiles per million. Yeah, they're 2 million now. All they'll do is double the cost of the same things they sell you. You'll get the same thing for $1.5 trillion that you got for $1 trillion. So you're involved in a money laundering operation. That's not going to do anything but drive the deficit up even more. So I think it's the worst thing that he can do is to add $500 billion, and it's going to infuriate a lot of people who expected different. So anyway, I'm disappointed in Donald Trump, and I'm not a Trump supporter, but I'm not an anti-Trump person.
Sure.
I just want something different, and I feel like I'm not getting it. That's my perspective. I don't think that's unreasonable.
We want the best for the American people. We want the best for the world. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I always say, people say, I voted for perp walks. I voted for this. I voted for that. Well, I voted for an economic revolution and a strategic revolution, and I think I'm getting it. So.
Yeah, and
I think that's where we end, and that is she feels like she's getting it, and I feel like we're not. Right. But I didn't vote for him. I voted for a third party. I almost like maybe just to get out there, and I'm not voting for either one of the mainstream parties anymore. I'm done with that for now.
Yes. Well, I vote.
But I understand.
No, I mean, I didn't vote for Trump. I'm not in the US, right? But I voted for someone who wasn't going to do warring like Barack Obama, that Nobel Peace Prize winner. And in the UK, I vote for notaxforwar.com. If you want to find
there you go.
legally, lawfully.
The last time not this time, the last time we can do I wrote in the ghost of Abraham Lincoln. That's what I voted for.
Thank you. And I'm going to have all the links in the description below. What I appreciate about both of you, one, how enjoyable this has been, but also that it is about different interpretations, different speculation, dialectic, looking at it this way, looking at it that way, and being willing to engage to have those conversations, because then out of that, something better will come. I'll have all the links to where you're at, where people can find you, Susan, on PrometheanAction.com, and for you, Garland Nixon, on Telegram, not on X because you're banned off X, and on YouTube and on Rumble. And Garland, you're going to be back soon with You, Me, and Tom. And Susan, you're going to be back with You, Me, and retired General Blaine Holt.
Looking forward to that.
Which will be fun and entertaining. And everybody, please, thank you so much. Subscribe, comment, like, all that business. Take care. All the best. Bye-bye.
Thank you.